I am Jack, 45 years old and going through a divorce. I have 2 adult children aged 22 and 20. When everything happened, I wasn't happy at all. I never expected to find what I did when I was cleaning up a knocked-over trash bag in the laundry room. It was a Saturday and I wasn't working. I was helping my wife, Sharon, with the housework because she wasn't feeling well. I had already vacuumed the family room, unloaded the dryer, and was unloading the washer to load the dryer when I accidentally knocked over the trash can. After cursing, I started cleaning up the mess when I found a couple of used condoms. I was stunned, upset, and extremely angry. Sharon and I hadn't used condoms in over 15 years. The only time we used them was when she had a yeast infection, and I had a vasectomy 18 years ago, so Sharon would never need birth control pills again. Our kids hadn't visited us in several weeks, so I didn't think the condoms could be from one of them. I wasn't sure what I should do, but I knew I had to take some action. First, I decided to leave, at least for a little while. I went into the bedroom and grabbed a suitcase, being careful not to wake Sharon since she was truly sick. Despite how angry I was, I still loved her. I packed clothes for a few days, took the condoms and my wedding ring and placed them on the kitchen table. Then, I wrote Sharon a note explaining what I had found and how hurt I was. The note said, "Sharon, my love. What you see on the table is what's left of our marriage. I'm sorry I wasn't enough for you. I didn't realize that you needed more than me. I'm leaving for a few days to figure out what I'm going to do. Please don't try to contact me. I will let you know when I'm ready to talk to you. If you choose not to tell the kids and they ask me, I won't hide anything from them. The same goes for our parents. I ask one thing more. Please think about how much you've hurt me. If we're going to continue as husband and wife, I expect truthful answers. Some of the questions will be difficult for you to answer. Not because you don't know the answers, but because I will insist on them, even if you don't want to give them. If you don't wish to answer when I contact you, just tell me. I won't let you continue to cheat on our marriage. If you can't give up your lover, tell me when I contact you, and I will remove myself from your life. This evidence shows you've not only betrayed our marriage but also our home. We may need to sell this house if we're to get back together. I still love you, but this is a near-fatal blow to our marriage. Your dear Jack." I packed up my truck and drove away, possibly for the last time. I had to pull over several times to clear my eyes. I wasn't paying attention and finally realized I was heading toward the cabin my grandfather left me. It turned out to be the perfect place to go. No phone, no cell service, no internet. It was ideal for thinking and making decisions. I turned off my cell phone and kept driving. I stayed at the cabin, only leaving for work, for about 3 weeks. I kept my phone off and told my work not to call me unless it was for business. On my lunch hour, I moved some of the bank accounts around to protect at least half of our savings. Sharon hadn't worked for a few years, so I was sure that if we divorced, it would cost me. I had a small trust fund that my grandfather left me, along with the cabin. Whatever I had to give Sharon, those assets would be protected. After a while, I had calmed down enough to make a decision. I drove toward town and, when I finally had a cell signal, pulled over to check my phone. I saw that I had missed calls from about 10 different people, besides Sharon, my kids, and surprisingly, our minister. I saw calls from both of our parents and several others I didn't recognize. Called home. When Sharon answered, I asked her if she was ready to answer my questions. She immediately started crying. She told me that the police were looking for me as a missing person and questioning her to see if she had harmed me. After she stopped rambling, I asked again if she was ready to answer the questions truthfully that I had for her. She started talking again, so I ended the call without getting an answer. I then called my kids. James, my oldest, wanted to know what I had done to make me run away. I was shocked. I told him that if that's what his mother told him and he believed it, then we were done talking. I then told him what I had found and asked if he or his sister had been to the house that week. He said he hadn't, but he didn't know if and had. He also said that the last time he spoke to and before all of this, she had broken up with her boyfriend and hadn't been dating anyone recently. Next I called and she gave me almost the same response. It seemed like Sharon hadn't told them the truth, and that made me even angrier. I called the police station and informed them that I hadn't been missing but had been out of contact with my wife because of serious issues between us. When I explained that Sharon knew I wasn't missing, they told me she had filed the missing person report and that they would speak to the prosecutor about the false report. I then called both sets of parents. Not surprisingly, my parents supported me, while Sharon's parents called me a liar and cursed me out for hurting Sharon. After those calls, I had had enough. I stopped by my boss's house, handed in my resignation, and started heading back to the cabin. Before I lost cell service, Sharon called. I pulled over and answered. She had calmed down a little and asked when I was coming home. Still angry about her making me the bad guy, I told her I would come to her love nest when and only when she told everyone the truth. I wouldn't be made out to be the bad guy. I told her I didn't cheat on her, those weren't my condoms, and I wouldn't accept that house as my home anymore. Sharon sniffled and then asked where I had been, why I hadn't come home. I replied, "That's not my home anymore. Just understand that." I continued, "You don't need to know where I've been because you gave up that right when you cheated. I quit work today so you won't be able to call me there. Where I'm going now, you don't need to find me. I won't be coming back. You should probably file for divorce because you can't sell the house without my signature, and I won't be paying the mortgage or utilities." I waited for her response, but all I got was silence, followed by a dial tone. I turned off my phone and drove to the cabin. I stopped in the village near the cabin and ate dinner at the local diner. Afterward, I continued to the cabin and went to sleep. The next morning, I returned to the village and rented a P.O. box at the post office to change my address. While there, I saw that our bank had a branch in the village, so I went in, identified myself, and informed them I would be accessing my accounts there from now on. With that sorted, I called a friend who was a lawyer and asked what steps I should take after what I had found. He asked what I had done so far, and when I explained, he said I'd done the right things to protect myself. Then, I had an idea and called a neighbor of ours, who was known to be a bit of a gossip. I asked if she had seen any strange cars at our house recently. She told me that there had been a bright red fancy sports car in the driveway for several hours on many occasions. She didn't know what kind of car it was, but it had a vanity plate that read God's number 1. I thanked her and asked if she could call and leave a message on my cell if the car showed up again. I figured she would understand why I asked, and the story would soon spread throughout the neighborhood. I then remembered that the minister had called me. I returned his call and asked what he wanted. He asked why I had abandoned my wife. I laughed and asked him about his red Corvette and when he last visited Sharon. The line went silent, and I heard a dial tone. I then called Sharon and told her she could leave messages on my phone, and I would answer when I was back in cell service range. As a final jab, I asked, "Is the minister better than me?" I heard a gasp, followed by a sob, and then the call abruptly ended. I called the lawyer again and told him I had found circumstantial evidence that our minister was the one who had been the unknown person involved with the used condoms. I explained what the neighbor had seen and how both the minister and Sharon had acted in response to my questions. I then told him to file for an illegal separation, citing adultery as the reason. I also asked him to file for divorce, naming the minister as the co-respondent. I explained that by filing both, I would be giving Sharon the opportunity to decide if she wanted to fight the divorce, but she couldn't fight the separation. He assured me it would be done. I wasn't prepared for the storm my actions caused, but I wasn't surprised or unhappy either. The busybody neighbor made sure the whole neighborhood knew about the red Corvette, and with several of the church deacons living nearby, the minister was fired. Sharon turned up pregnant, was arrested for filing the false police report, and lost the baby. My son tried to take his mother's side, but after I refused all his calls for over a month, he called me from his sister's phone and told me that Sharon had finally told him the truth. I reminded him that I was still angry and, as an extra jab, told him I was going to get a DNA test from him and Anne and sue his biological father for back child support. He sobbed and hung up. I knew the kids were mine because of the DNA tests required by the school. I was just too emotionally raw to let him off the hook for taking sides. I called and told her what I had done, asking her to have James call me so I could apologize to him. The prosecutor dropped the charges, and Sharon signed the divorce papers and moved out of town. I moved back into the house after getting new beds for all the bedrooms and decided I needed a housekeeper. I brought her in to look after me, and she never started dating again. She said no one was as good as her dad, and that was the kind of man she wanted. My old boss called and offered me a job promotion that also allowed me to work from home. Life was good.